What? Oh, I've got to share this with you. So usually when I'm recording my videos, I'm using the Hive WOS 100C, and these lights are RGB WW that is, and they are pretty good lights. I'd say a professional grade light, really pretty good. But what I've noticed is there are now lights by Airy called the Airy Orbiter, and I'm not using Airy Orbiters, but there's a company that is making a similar light to the Airy Orbiter in that it is a full spectrum light, and that's actually what I'm using here. So these are lights by a company called Prolycht, and these are the Prolycht 300 FS. I have one in front and one behind, and the one behind is just kind of creating this like moonlight look on the back of my head, and the one in front obviously is giving me all the light, and I have a bounce card here that's filling in some of the shadow area on the side of my face. So just with these two lights, I'm able to create what I think is a pretty nice image. The nice thing about these lights are you can dial them in to your color space. So right now I plan to deliver this video in Rec 709, and I had the lights tuned to only put out within a Rec 709 color space, which is something I've never heard of in a light before. This is, to me, this is like voodoo. But that said, these lights are able to use the full spectrum of the rainbow to create white and all the variants in between of white, which is something normal lights, mortal lights, the lights we've been using all this time cannot do. So in this light, the Hive light, how it's creating the whites and the various shades of white, is that a thing? The various hues of white is there are two sets of white LEDs within this. One is set to a cooler temperature and the other is set to a warmer temperature. And then by varying the intensities of those two white LEDs, you're able to end up with different temperatures of white. The Prolycht work in a very different way. So this is what we would call a RGW ACL light. So it's got amber, cyan, and lime in there, as well as the regular RGB part of that spectrum. And it mixes all of these colors to produce whites in all the different temperatures. So you end up with a color spectrum that looks very, very similar to what you would see in nature. And that means that instead of using a light like this, where you end up with spills of blue or spills of green or just different undesirable tones that will end up in your skin, and then you'll have to correct in post. With this light, you can precisely dial in the exact look you want, how you want your skin to look, how tune your camera to every setting that you need, and then in post, it makes the color grading super easy. It just works, and you can get very, very accurate skin tones in a very, very pleasing image. So I'm excited to share with you what I learned, because I just got these things. They just came in a couple days ago, and I've only been having a chance to play with them just now because I've been very, very busy. Other thing that I want to share with you, which I think is very exciting, is the lens I'm shooting this on. So this is not one of my usual Canon lenses or one of my Voigtlander lenses or any of my other lenses. This is actually a new lens by Seven Artisan. And this lens you've probably seen before online. I first saw this probably a couple months ago, and it kind of caught my eye because it seemed to have some character. It seemed to have, and I don't mean that as a bad thing, it seemed to feel a bit less wooden, a bit less clinical than most of the lenses that we use for photography. And for that reason, I was very curious to get them in the studio and have a play with them. And so far, this is the 35mm I'm shooting with. I'm really liking what I'm seeing. Anyway, look, I want to keep this one short, so like, subscribe, and comment below because I really need your input. What do you think of the skin tones? What do you think of these the lenses I'm using? What do you think of the subtle? You see how subtle that is? How I can just roll that off? And here's a tricky thing, is that when you use these lights, like a lot of lights, like these lights, and these, like I said, these were, if you know what these are, then you know they're pretty decent lights. Most of the lights I've used, if you crank the saturation very high, it ends up breaking. It looks like it breaks the image. It literally breaks the image and it becomes unusable. So you end up with very, almost like it's blowing out on the saturation. This light doesn't do that. And it's the first light I've used as an RGB light that is able to give you the full saturation and not break the image. So I think it's really, really cool, but I'm very curious as to what you think. What do you think of this image? What do you think of the skin tones? What do you think of everything? Comment below, and I will be reading them, and I'll comment back. And I plan to do a full review of these lights. I think that they deserve their own review, a full review of the lenses. And I also want to have one more Sigma video I need to follow up. And by the way, for those of you that were wondering, I'll reveal what camera is what in the comments. And I will see you next time.